Welcome to our official review for Mr. Morale and the Big Steppers, Kendrick Lamar's 5th studio album, and honestly, thank you so much from the whole NFR team for sticking around for this whole roll-up because we started covering this album a year and a half ago. It's been a major ride, so thank you so much. But today's finally the day, Lou, and my emotions have changed because going back to last Friday when we did our official reaction review on the Patreon plan, my emotions have changed.
I'm liking the direction. It's so different.
You got a lot,
but I'm waiting for some bars, bro. I don't know if
you
you guys feel the same. Let me know in the
No,
comments.
because why? So if you guys want to check that out, link in the description. But now going into this new album review, how do you feel? Because Kendrick Lamar projects take a couple listens to really understand it.
Yeah, right off the bat, I'm like, this is going to be a tough album to actually, give scores to and give a review for because there's so much to digest with any Kendrick Lamar album. And on first listen, I was sort of underwhelmed. I'm not going to lie to you. I thought that the concept was super ambitious and I liked that component, but individually, I wasn't messing with all the songs. And then, of course, as you go deeper with the listening, it starts to improve a little bit. You know what I mean? So with every Kendrick album, I feel like you need time to really digest the material. And that's what we ended up doing over these last couple of days. But let's jump right into the review, starting off with the artist performance. What did you take out of it, man?
Well, listen, this is a completely different Kendrick than I've ever seen before. And there was a lot of questions of, was he going to go with the Range Brother flows? Was he going to be, more comedic on this album? And we did a bunch of content on that. But this approach is super different because I feel as if you're going to get a range of different styles from Kendrick that he's explored in previous albums while putting a new twist on it. So, example, the first performance I really want to highlight is on something like Crown. That sounds like something that comes out of, let's say, recordings from Entitled Unmastered or Tip of a Butterfly, but now it has a different sort of feeling to it. And I also love the notes that he hits on that. I love how dynamic the vocal changes are as well. Going to a song like, let's say, Mr. Morale, the flow switches were seamless within those songs. And I feel as if that's the case for the whole track list. And I also love the type of energy that Kendrick's coming with because there's certain songs where, you feel the emotional pain and distress within his voice. Example, on something like, Mother I'm Sober, that's a song where Kendrick is tackling extremely dark and I would say uneasy content matter, but he does it in a way where he allows you to enter the scene with him and he allows you to enter his environment. And we'll tackle more of that content, in the content section. But what do you take out of the artist performance off the bat?
I think it was a masterclass in performance, especially the fact that he kind of really focused on conveying his emotions. I feel like the performance is more rooted in kind of a stage performer's, like in terms of the dynamics of it, rather than really him focusing on being an MC, because it's a bit light on the double entendres. It's a bit light on the punchlines, the quotables. He focuses more on really portraying that emotion through various tones and various, I would say, flows and cadences. What's also interesting is that I feel like with this album, Kendrick's really trying to modernize his style a little bit by maybe at some times slurring words, trying out experimental deliveries. And what's also interesting is that if you look at a song like United in Grief, that's probably one of his best ever mic performances because he's switching back and forth from these abstract flows. And then once you get that drum groove that kicks in, you realize that he speeds up his flow and he's literally rapping like he's that drum kit, which is so fucking impressive because his voice turns into an instrument. Exactly. And he's done that before on songs like All Right and so many other tracks. And it's like, who the fuck else is rapping like this and who has such harmony with the production? So that was awesome. Also, what's interesting is that I feel like he stuck with this really mellow tone for a lot of the album. And it wasn't one-dimensional because it was the point for him to kind of be melancholic as he's going through this healing process. So listen, it was meticulously crafted. One, I would say, not complain, but something that I did notice is that going to a song like Silent Hill, and I want your opinion on this, it was the first time that I ever heard a Kendrick song and thought, holy shit, this sounds like so-and-so. And I legitimately thought for a second that I was listening to Baby Keem. And I remember I had to go pick up my phone and check if Baby Keem was featured because I literally thought Kendrick was Baby Keem.
And I've seen a lot of people talk about that comparison on Twitter, and a lot of people are stating with it. But honestly, I feel as if it sounds a lot different just because it's Kendrick delivering it.
It didn't sound very different.
It sounded different to me. I'm being honest with you. That doesn't sound like a verse that would fit on the Melodic Blue, to be honest with you.
Oh, I think it really does. If you're looking at the cadences, even on songs like N95 and Rich Spirit, I'm like, these cadences are super similar to Baby Keem. And I know that, of course, Kendrick and Keem have been working together since probably 2017 or maybe even earlier. So Kendrick did help him develop his sound and does have influence on Keem. But now we've kind of known that to be Keem's distinct sound. So I don't know how I felt about Kendrick kind of tackling it. I thought he executed it well, but again, to me, that's more distinctly Keem's sound. So again, it was cool, but I didn't think it was totally necessary.
Yeah, in my opinion, though, I feel as if it was well executed on, so it didn't necessarily bother me. And
Yeah.
I do understand the similarities, but I feel as if it fit into the context of the album, and it wasn't like, okay, cookie clutter. Let me take Keem's flow and let me try to implant it onto the track list. But I also want to talk about a song like Worldwide Steppers. Okay, that is one of the best performances on the whole album because Kendrick uses this flow that I've never heard before, and it's so straightforward and like it's monotone to the point where it sounds almost robotic, and he sounds like an alien on it. Like the rate that he's rapping at is so meticulous and so fine-tuned that you're there and you're like, how the fuck does this guy still do this? And I also wanted to butt in when you were talking about him, matching his flows and cadences with a lot of the productions on the album. I found that on the second verse of, Mr. Morale, if you go listen to the 808 pattern, his flow matches it almost, exactly to the point where like he becomes the instrument again. And that's what I love about this performance was it was super well crafted. It was meticulous. And honestly, it was an amazing rating for me. Like going into it, I didn't expect nothing else besides amazing.
We'll give it the amazing score, absolutely. And it's you have to admire the showmanship that he brought. And before we do move on, do you agree that it kind of felt like the purpose of this performance was more to convey emotions rather than prove that I'm the best rapper alive, like he tried doing, let's say, on Damn, for example?
Well, Damn was more open for interpretation, and I feel as if the writing style had to match that. And I feel as if this one is just more direct in performance. Like
I'm not talking about the content, I mean more in terms of
but that's where I'm
performance.
that's where I'm gonna transition into. Like the performance had to meet that content because that's where the whole concept of the album lies. So I do agree with you. It was much more direct and it was much more suited for the theme of the album. But going into the content now, this is easily Kendrick Lamar's most personal album, and that's something that you understood off the first listen. Like, he literally poured his whole heart and emotion into this track list. And what's great for me at this point is that who's really putting that much heart and emotion into their projects, especially within the mainstream? Like I haven't heard an album so rich in detail and focus, in the mainstream rap lane since maybe. I honestly don't even know, bro. Like I went through this album and I was reading all the double entendres and I was reading the rhyme schemes and I'm like, honestly, what's more impressive is how well this is crafted.
I wouldn't say there's that many double entendres.
No,
to be honest.
no. But I'm saying that I went through the double entendres. I'm not saying there's many. What I'm saying is that wasn't the focus for this project.
Yeah, I wasn't.
The writing was more geared towards making you understand the emotions that he's going through throughout this track list. And what's interesting is that I also thought that there was going to be like this full-fledged concept within, like, let's say the double albums. And you kind of got that. But to be honest with you, the side A and the side B completely, come together full circle. And I feel as if that's a big component.
They do, but I do like the separation because side B starts on the song Count Me Out.
Yes.
And what's interesting is that song actually starts off with Whitney saying Session 10 Breakthrough. And that's when you start seeing that. Because what I noticed, I want to say this, off the first, let's say, 3 tracks, Kendrick sounds like a tortured soul. His headspace is kind of just going in circles.
Very hectic.
And he doesn't seem focused. He doesn't have clarity within his own headspace. But once you get to a song like Count Me Out, you see that he's no longer tap dancing around his problems. He's facing them head on and in a more direct way. And I feel like that's kind of the whole idea of Mr. Morale and the Big Steppers. It's sort of this self-exploration of Kendrick Lamar's trauma from the past and present and how it sort of led him to this destructive path and how he needed support around him to seek out counseling and really grow as an individual. And, he kind of seeks forgiveness and redemption throughout the album. Mm-hmm. And what's also cool is that I feel like this album feels more like a play than it does an album, to be honest with you. And I feel like, again, it comes down to the nature of the writing and the performances as well. Also, all the reoccurring motifs in terms of the tap dancing that, is featured multiple times. In terms of a song like We Cry Together, where that is completely a stage play. It's all acting. It's all performance-based. There's not that much rhythmic components to it. It literally feels like a stage play. And so many of these things you could visualize and think, wow, I could see this playing out as a hip-hop musical. And at the end of the day, what I got from this was it being just, Kendrick's long therapy session as you're seeing him kind of progress as the track list continues. And in terms of the writing, it's definitely his most personal, and I can't believe that he really dug this deep, especially on songs like Mother I Sober, where he's really tapping into his childhood trauma and what his family had experienced and how it's more become a generational curse.
And you know what's crazy about that song too is that I was going through the Genius annotations and they explained that where he was talking about his mother's trauma and how she was, abused early on in her life, and how now that manifested into his life when, he was unfaithful with his wife. And then you see how he's playing with those double perspectives. Another thing that I caught on onto the track list is that Kendrick feels the burden of being the hip hop savior. And that was a big thing for me, is that example on a song like Savior. Listen to what he says, at least for, the intro of the track. Kendrick made you think about it, but he is not your savior. Cold made you feel in power, but he is not your savior. Future said, get a money counter, but he's not your savior. Braun made you give him his flowers, but he's not your savior. He is not your savior. And I feel as if this is a big component within the theme of the album, is to be level-headed. And Kendrick kind of takes himself off of the pedestal, whereas if with other albums, he was always at the forefront and he was very braggadocious when delivering those types of, let's say, messages in previous albums. But this one was a lot more laid back and stripped back, where he was kind of telling you, I'm human as well. And you could even look at, let's say, the album cover for that, because we were talking about this in the pre-album stream, where, Kendrick looks like he's portraying, this family life man, someone that's, kind of in the everyday life, and how you should see him as that and not an icon, and at the end of the day, what Kendrick's trying to say throughout this album is think for yourself, go through your own healing process. And that was more of a personal message that I'd gotten throughout this track list. And sorry, go ahead. What were you saying?
No, I was going to say that was a beautiful component to it, to see that after all this time where, he had kind of self-inflicted that pressure, and also the fans had put it on him, that he's able to now take a step back and, really realize that there shouldn't be this prophecy from one man, and we shouldn't be looking up to, one sole person for all the answers. And it was also cool to see how, he addressed situations like the George Floyd protest, and how people expected him to be out there in the streets and to be, let's say, the sole man responsible, or one of the sole people responsible for really being a leader within that movement. And it's not fair to put that kind of pressure on someone. And I think that it was great that he addressed that. Apart from that, I really just feel like the themes on this album are timeless. When you're looking at topics such as abusive relationships, unity within family, generational curses, strengthening one's mental health, these are all poignant themes that I think will live on for years and years, which will make this album age gracefully. And I feel like, like we were saying earlier, it's the first time ever where there's truly not a lot left open to interpretation in terms of Kendrick's writing being so direct. And it's him, facing his truth and wanting us to see it for what it truly is.
Absolutely. And he took risks in the writing as well. Example, in a song like Anti-Diaries, like the writing is extremely taboo on that as well, where he's just, he's tackling into, like, let's say, transphobia and like different types of racism. And like, he's putting it back on himself as well, saying that at a certain point, like, I was a part of that. And now, like, how you could see how the perspective has changed, how he's gotten older. So listen, I think the content's perfect, to be honest with
flawless,
you.
guys.
It's flawless.
Yeah.
Like, the writing is flawless, and I think that he's low-key upgraded, since Damn. I have to say, I'm being honest with you. Like, this was so direct, and there was so much material, and what I also love about the content is that you had 19 songs on here, all right? This was a double album. None of the writing on this album...
18 songs, by the way.
Sorry, 18 songs. You had no misses within any single verse, nothing whatsoever. It was perfectly knit in, and I feel as if that's a big component for me. But let's go into the features, all right? Because this was such a big conversation. We got asked by so many people, what are your top 3 features that you want to see on this album, this and that. So when the feature list came out, right, because it only came out once the album dropped, what were your initial thoughts on that? How did it, go into the first listen? And then what do you take out of them now that you've had some time to live with this album?
Yeah, well, there were certain ones that surprised me, others that didn't. For example, Baby Keem, I had a feeling he was going to be a lock. Kodak Black, there was heavy rumors of him appearing, and nobody kind of believed us when we were dropping our videos. But he ended up having multiple appearances, which was super interesting. Didn't expect to see Ghostface Killah. That was refreshing. Was super happy to see Sampha there. And a lot of other vocalists that aren't really known to the mainstream, such as Beth Gibbons, such as Sam Dew. So that was really interesting. So yeah, I'll just read out the features. So we had 11 coming from Baby Keem, Kodak Black, Ghostface Killah, Blast, Taylor Page, Amanda Ryfer, Sampha, Summer Walker, Tana Leone, Beth Gibbons, and Tana... Sorry, I already said Tana Leone. Yeah, so I'm going to say this. My favorite feature would have to be Sampha on Father Time. I think that his vocals are absolutely mesmerizing, and he has this very light vocal timbre, and it kind of offers this comforting energy, while Kendrick's tone is the opposite. He kind of sounds uncomfortable while delivering his verse. So it creates a nice dichotomy in tone. And I thought that was really refreshing to hear on that track. What did you think of Kodak Black, though? Because it's definitely been controversial, but what are your thoughts
Honestly,
on it?
I loved it, and I love what it signifies to the album, because this album is about healing and, going back to your past and understanding your past traumas, like we spoke about in the content. And I feel as if the Kodak feature, well, if we're looking at, let's say, something like Silent Hill, yes, it was a fantastic verse, but it's more like, what does the Kodak feature mean to the album itself? And I feel as if it represents something like, you could find a healing process throughout whatever, because we know what type of stuff Kodak went through, and we understand, what it was like for him being locked up, and what he had to go through legally. And for Kendrick to take that and to put it on the album further advances the concept for me, and that's the connection I made for it. And I love all of like the little parts that he had within the album, but the Silent Hill feature was fantastic. He absolutely rips it apart. But I'm gonna say my favorite feature on this is actually Taylor Page. I have to say that Taylor Page did a fantastic job on We Cry Together. She's fantastic, honestly. Like the way that she was able to invoke such emotions on you, like also like within her performances, like all the voice cracks as well, like you could tell how angry they were when making that recording. And that's why, like, I feel as if it feels like almost you're watching a play. Like there's so much emotion that's being portrayed throughout that one performance. I'm also a big fan of Baby Keem's interlude. I believe it was on Savior. That was fantastic. And I think that you could expect a lot more now for his next album, just because the lyrical presence on this feature was fantastic. The writing is flawless, and it further proves that he could be a lyricist going forward. I also want to talk about Sampha as well, because I noticed a couple of things. Sampha's done a lot of hooks for hip hop artists, but this one was so different because, as you said, Kendrick's energy was completely different than his, but somehow he found a way to be able to make that chemistry work. And it kind of adds as like this lighter tone to the song for something like Father Time, but then you go back to Kendrick's verses and brings you back down again, and it kind of puts you in more of like a different headspace. So I really enjoyed that. Blast was fire as well. Amanda Reifer was fantastic as well. Honestly, everyone really did their thing. So we talked about Nas possibly being on this track list. We talked about Andre 3K, but it ended up being Ghostface Killah, one of the biggest OGs to ever touch a mic. So how did you feel about that decision going forward with Purple Hearts?
Yeah, that was interesting because you had, kind of this more melodic jam with Summer Walker on there, and then you have this opening at the last verse for Ghostface Killah to come in, and lyrically he killed it as you expect him to. So that was a great verse. Apart from that, like you said, on Die Hard, I love what Blast and Amanda Reifer both did. Their vocals were stunning and really created a song that I think is maybe one of the only tracks that could have, let's say, some radio play. Apart from that, yeah, all the features were pretty excellent, to be honest with you. Even going back to I would say Taylor Page, because she is an actress and it was all performance. It was all raw emotion. And like you were saying, everything that she did, from the groaning, from the moans, from everything, it was all superb. And I do think that in terms of the role that the features play within the album, it's really cool how someone like Blast, let's say, is asking for forgiveness on a song like Die Hard. So it's almost as if these features are speaking from a perspective that Kendrick can personally relate to, and that relates to his will and desire within the project. So I thought that was really cool. They all played into the overall theme.
Even Tana Leon and Mr. Morale, by the way, added some fantastic energy. And what I liked about the Tana Leon performance was that he didn't necessarily have too much of a place on the track, and it was mostly Kendrick carrying it out. But like those sudden hints, let's say within the transition of the verses, was really well done, because those verses are super intense, and you needed someone like Tana Leon to come in and kind of break it off, kind of take you back down. And then after that, Kendrick, comes back with his super quick flows. So that was awesome as well. And what I like about the features too is that, you were just saying it, they all play into the concept of the album. They were super well calculated in the grand scheme of things, and that was something that I expected out of this track list. Kendrick wasn't just going to feature anyone just to have them on this album. It was really like, they have to be able to play here, and they have to be able to complement me, rather than, okay, let me just stack this up and see what happens.
Were you surprised not to see any TDE artists on there?
Listen,
that was for it being his last TDE album, that kind of took me aback a bit.
I was surprised, but in the grand scheme of the album, like, were they really needed? You know what I'm trying to say? Like, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah, they could have been included.
Because I listened to this feature list, and honestly, like, no one else is needed for me at this point. Like, I obviously would have wanted to see like J. Cole on this. I would have wanted to see another J Rock feature, Schoolboy Q. I would have wanted to see Absol on this, even Isaiah Rashad, SZA. I would have loved for them to be on this track list, but for the feature list that I have at the moment, I feel as if it fits into the concept, and that's what I'm happy with. So I think the features were amazing, but let's move on to the production. So this is definitely not To Pimp a Butterfly. It's definitely not GKMC or Damn. It's something completely different. So what have you gotten out of the soundscape so far? Because honestly, it's fucking confusing, bro. Like, it's a really different album as far as production
goes. It's different. It's definitely experimental. I think that in terms of it being an overall soundscape, it's the most modern sounding Kendrick Lamar album. And I also feel like when you're really looking at the totality of these beats, it is Kendrick Lamar's most stripped back soundscape and features these instrumentals that are more minimalistic and kind of slower paced in terms of the tempo. That's something that I noticed as well. And it felt like a lot of the times, you could imagine Kendrick being in the studio with Soundwave and, Soundwave asking Kendrick how he fucked with the beat, and Kendrick would just being like, add some more piano in there and we'll be golden, because there's a lot of piano on this album, but it works really well, especially when he's going through these cathartic verses where he's really just expressing himself in a raw way. I felt like that was really well calculated. Apart from that, I love how there's so many sonic transitions within individual tracks. For example, on United in Grief, you have this very chaotic and unpredictable beat where, you're starting off with these piano keys and you transition to a drum groove, and there's this constant change, and that really adds in terms of entertainment value. Apart from that, I mean, you also have a beat like N95 where you're asking yourself, is Kendrick rapping over a drill beat right now? Like, what's going on here?
It's definitely different.
You also have some influence in terms of Baby Keem's production, because he actually has some credits on here, and you'll find that Kendrick uses sometimes these 80s electronic synths that you would have heard on something like the Melodic Blue. So there's a kind of a mixture of sounds going on, but I think that the takeaway is that it's his most stripped back, it's minimalistic, very heavy in piano, and it was also really cool to see how he utilized a lot of the choir backgrounds that added a lot to the track list. But what did you take out of the production?
Okay, so I have a couple of standouts in my opinion that are some of the craziest produced Kendrick songs that I've ever heard. Something like Mr. Morale, that was produced by Beach Noise and by Pharrell. That sounds like something that comes out of Stranger Things. Like, those synths in back are fucking mesmerizing, and I'm not sure if you paid attention to the 808 pattern within the thing, but every time like there's a switch in Kendrick's flow or cadence, or every time there's a switch in verse, it goes and then it kind of skips. It goes boo 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 boo, and then after that it continues again constant, and that kind of got me more locked in and added a refreshing pace to the song itself. And listen, you can never count out Uncle Al, because every time he comes together, it's always fucking magic. And something like We Cry Together, listen, I'm getting goosebumps talking about it right now. This sounds like something off of a fucking Griselda project, okay? And that's what I love about this beat from Uncle Al, is like, it's so dark, it's so sinister. I love the small little piano keys as the loop continuously progresses, and even when the song gets deeper and deeper and deeper, it gets darker.
Yeah.
It's darker, it gets more sinister, and then once you get to the end of the track, boom, now there's a break. Then it's like, oh, everything mellows out, and you could feel that shift in the energy, especially with Kendrick and Taylor Page's performance. So that's what I'd gotten out of that. The beat switch on something like, I believe it was Worldwide Steppers, that was fantastic, bro. Like, that break in the middle where you kind of get a break
it's
from
a sample. You get transitioning into a sample.
Yeah, you kind of get a break from the
rhythmic guitar comes in.
Yeah, and it's cool
really
to
nice.
see how Kendrick really utilizes experimental hip hop, let's say, within this album. Like, there is definitely a good amount of it within the track list, and then you have your sort of more traditional produced tracks as well.
And what's cool too is that, like, going to a song like Savior Interlude, there's this unlikely combination of Baby Keem rapping, but in the background it's this violin based production completely. And I feel like that's what you could also expect production wise, is that it won't be as layered sonically as something like To Pimp a Butterfly. What you will get, on the contrary, is more of these compositions that are based with one or two instruments, maybe a beat switch thrown in there. But even though it's more simplistic, I think that was sort of the purpose throughout the track list. Apart from that, Father Time was an amazing fucking production as well. It sounded more classical in terms of the glistening violins, the grand piano that came in, and again, it kind of alters to this drum pattern, and I feel like the chords have more of an uplifting nature to them on Father Time. So it was really cool to see how this all came together and how he rounded up, again, some of the best producers working right now, such as Boy Wonder, such as Soundwave, who he's been working with. Beach Noise are a great production duo as well. So everybody killed it production-wise.
Absolutely. Listen, amazing rating. I think enough said.
There's
about
a couple
the
of beats like Die Hard, Rich Spirit, and Count Me Out that weren't my favorites.
I loved Count Me Out, especially with
production-wise, not my favorite.
The vocals on Count Me Out. I'm telling you, we're gonna listen to it.
Oh no, vocally, yes.
No, like the vocals when they come in like at a certain point throughout it. Like I believe you have a flute playing and then it transitions into the vocal sample after, and then Kendrick speeds up his verses with it. I love that about the production. It's actually one of my favorite beats on the actual album. But okay, let's go on to the replay values. So. You and I are divided, man. Yeah, I mean, listen.
We are torn on this,
so,
for sure.
Okay, so we'll kind of explain to you what Lou and I, what I think with Lou. I think it was perfect.
I think it was great.
Lou thinks it's great. So we wanted to meet in the middle with amazing, but why do you think it's great? And how do you see, let's say this album aging on with you?
Listen, I think, first of all, when I think about replay value, I think about how many settings can I play this album in and how often will I really be in that zone and mood to go through this experience. And to be honest with you, I think that it's maybe the most uncomfortable album experience just because of the depth and the weight of these themes. It's a very heavy album to go through, and it's not something that I could personally see myself playing every day. Apart from that, even looking at it from the way the masses are going to receive it and how much other people will be playing it, I feel like it maybe won't be as much as other Kendrick albums, just because by design, Kendrick didn't really include any hits per se that are going to be charting. It wasn't necessarily targeted towards this commercial sound. Maybe you could say N95 is, let's say, the banger of the album, but I don't feel like there are as many hits. Apart from that, I just think that it's maybe Kendrick's least accessible album, and I think that a lot of the songs on here, as much as I do admire them and will be listening to them in the context of the album, they're brilliant. But for example, I'll take it back to a song like You, where I won't be sitting around thinking randomly, let me listen to Auntie Diaries, just for the entertainment of it. I'll have to experience it within the context of the album. So I think for that reason, the instant replay is going to be great for me, just because I could see how I'll have to be in a certain mood to really want to consume the album. But for the rest of this year, I could see this being my most played, just because I think that it's arguably the best album we've heard so far this year. And the replay value is also going to increase just because of how much there is to really map out and kind of scope out of this project. So why is it perfect to you?
Okay, so it's perfect for me because
you see it being a bit not as accessible as previous projects?
Listen, it's not as accessible as previous projects, but it's accessible for me. And I think that's the most important factor, is going into this track list and also having so much material to play with. The fact that, you're taking an 18-song track list, and I could take out almost every song here and say that they were all W's, is a big standout for me.
You have any skips?
I don't have any skips. Okay. Throughout the whole album, I love doing it back and forth. So
I have one, which is not bad out of 18.
What was
Rich Spirit.
Rich Spirit.
Yeah.
I've actually warmed up to it. I've gotten more into it, and that was one of the songs that I was going to be like, maybe I won't revisit this all that much, but in the context of the album was fantastic. And I really realized the replay value of the album yesterday night when I did my final listen, and I was like, okay, this is really going to be a heavy album for me. So explaining to you why I think it's perfect replay value on the concept of the album, I'm going to have to be forced to go back into this track list and really listen to it hard, really understand what's going on here, understanding the lyrical depth as well, and understanding all the emotion. That's big for me. I think the fact that Kendrick hasn't dropped in 5 years and now I have all this new material to play with, that's going to be big for me. I've given Damn, let's say I say 5 years to really age with me, and every single time I listen to that album, even 5 years later, I find something new. I feel as if I find a certain type of energy that I didn't feel on a previous listen. So that's happening to me right now with this album. The double disc, I mean, it's not prominent within hip hop as much anymore. And I feel as if that's something that I really enjoyed within it, was getting all of this material, but finding that I could find value throughout all of it. Plus, I have so many standouts that I'm going to add to my playlist, like Count Me Out, Crown. I'm going Father Time. I'm going Worldwide Steppers, N95, United in Grief. I'm going Silent Hill, Mr. Morale. These are all songs that I am a really big fan of, and if I want more storytelling tracks too, I could get that on songs like, let's say, Mother I Sober, Auntie Diaries. Like, I kind of gotten the Kendrick I needed, and that's what was big for me. Even something like We Cried Together, I was talking about this with Fajella, and I'm like, dude, that's a fantastic song that I'm playing in my car now. Like, I never thought I would play that. And listening to that Alchemist production, it just makes it all that much better for me. So it's also, I'm a huge
See, again,
Kendrick fan.
that's another example of a track that I'll only listen to if I'm doing a dive of the project as a whole. It's not something that I would listen to or, let's say, enjoy individually without knowing the context of the other material. But yeah, it's definitely going to be, I think, a grower for a lot of people. And even though not everybody's going to connect to each and every single song, I think that we're going to warm up to a lot of them. So we're going to meet in the middle for this one and give it an amazing rating for the replay value. I had great, Ant had perfect, so we had to compromise. But let's get into the overall rating, because it's very interesting to kind of see what Kendrick attempted here. I think that it's definitely an album that requires a lot of thought. I think it's Kendrick Lamar's most personal, most intimate, and most confessional album yet. And what's interesting is that on a lot of his previous projects, he was giving you this unbiased outlook on the world's injustices. And now he's kind of finally tapped into his own human condition. And he's really kind of taken off that superhero cape and told everybody, all of his listeners, I'm human, I'm normal, I'm the same as you, I bleed the same blood that you do. And I think that was so refreshing to see him really ground himself the way that he did and pick apart his own flaws and really show the human being that he is, because that just makes so many more people be able to relate to him. Apart from that, I think substance-wise and writing-wise, it'll probably be the best writing that you'll get on an album this year. I think no one's giving you the same substance that Kendrick Lamar is giving you in 2022. And I think that hopefully this could inspire up-and-coming artists to really dig as deep as Kendrick and, you know, bring out these powerful messages that are personal, but that can also relate to the masses. So I think that was genius. I think the production was super well executed, more of a modern twist. And the way that I feel about this album is that it's kind of like watching this profound play or this profound drama film. Like, it's not something that I want to, you know, revisit every single day, but it makes me think of experiencing a movie like The Green Mile, which to me is a fucking masterpiece when you're looking at the acting, the storyline, even the scene where you have, you know, the character of John Coffey where he's in that chair, and just how profound that experience is. Even though it's emotionally draining, it's something that really connects with you. And I think that's what Kendrick does super well too, is that he always thinks about how his music is going to connect to a listener. And on tracks like Crown or Savior, I love the fact that he's kind of doing the second person narration where he's talking to you directly. He's including you for the ride of the album. So is it Kendrick Lamar's best album? I don't think so, but I do think that it's close to perfect. It's near flawless.
Absolutely, and I'm on that same level with you. I listen. I don't know yet. Okay, I want to say that I don't know if it's
you could see yourself going to perfect with time.
Absolutely, like any Kendrick album, like right, like music is constantly evolving, and what I love about this album is it purposely captivates that emotion. Like, this is gonna be an ever evolving sound for me, because there's so many timeless messages, as you were mentioning in this review, that it's gonna resonate with me. Let's say 3 years down the line, 4 years down the line, like these are things, these are lessons that people need to be able to learn and get for themselves. And I feel as if that's sprinkled throughout the whole track list, and that's what I really appreciated from. And what I love about this album is Kendrick took 5 years off, and he perfectly explained to me what was going on. That was something that I really wanted to know and see, because Kendrick has been such a big inspiration in my life, and to be able to receive that on this track list is a fucking blessing. And going to each of the performances, so much new stuff to go through, so many new flows, so many vicious verses as well. You're getting all kinds of different introspection from Kendrick. So the concept and the track list is super entertaining. The soundscape is super unpredictable as well, and I love that about the album, that it constantly has you, off your chair. Like, you kind of feel as if you're in that play with Kendrick Lamar, and that's what I really got out of it. And going on to the features as well, they've added so much to the track list, but not to a point where it was overbearing. So I think that was a great calculation by Kendrick to bring in a cast of people that were going to be able to help him execute on this concept. And listen, you got a Kendrick Lamar record, I think it's beautiful to be able to receive this in 2022, because you and I speak often about, music quality visibility, especially within the mainstream of rap at the current moment. And this was much needed. This was an album that, is going to really, I feel as if, push boundaries, and that's going to really push people to create art and to create things that, get you thinking, and to be able to bring that substance back in hip hop. That's what I was missing this year, and I got it back with Kendrick, at least for the mainstream, because Denzel Curry's Melt My Eyes See Your Future is definitely another great fucking concept record that I'm bumping. So I think overall the album's amazing. It was such a great fucking experience going through this, and I love the whole motion of it, like covering this rollout, the wait, the anticipation. It was all worth it for me, and as a Kendrick Lamar fan, I am definitely satisfied, and I'm definitely happy I picked up Section 80 10 years ago, because you see
what a ride it's been. The artistic growth has been beautiful, and this is just a beautiful addition to the discography, again, because it is his most personal, as we were saying. And again, it might not be an album that's for everybody, but I think that if you really sit the time to consume this and try to understand what he was trying to go for, you will see the genius, even if you don't personally connect individually to every song. So yeah, it's an amazing album, and what a ride it's been. And again, I think that this 5-year wait was merited, and it's cool to see that he made an album that he wanted to make. You could totally tell that every creative decision was made not to sell records or not to reach a certain demographic. It was because this is what drove him. This is what has been inspiring him over these last couple of years. So very cathartic experience. But guys, let us know how you feel about the album in the comments section. We're always curious to interact with you guys and hear your thoughts. Also, if you guys do want to check out our album reaction uncut, you guys can do that by accessing the link in our description to our Patreon. We actually do these album reactions every week, and we're going to continue to do them for the biggest releases of the entire year. So guys, thank you so much for joining us on this review, and for all the love and support that you guys have shown us throughout this entire Kendrick Lamar rollout, and we'll catch you guys in the next one.